The next series of visuals that we're going to create are going to focus on what time of day or during the week are we seeing the most dollars flow into our coffee shops. In other words, when during the work week do we see the most business? What time of day? We're a coffee shop, so spoiler alert, the data is probably going to tell us that most of our business occurs in the morning when people are buying coffee and buying scones and buying tea and things like that. But we also want to see, are more of our customers coming in on Thursdays or Fridays or Saturdays, so on and so forth. So we're just going to build some quick visuals that are going to help really surface that information. And so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw a table onto the page. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, let's go ahead and make this a matrix instead. The difference between a table and a matrix is for tables, we're just throwing a bunch of columns, into the visual. Whereas with a matrix, we have the extra control of having precision over rows, columns, and values. So here, I'm going to add my total sales measure to my values. And you can see right now it's just summing everything up because I haven't added anything to columns or rows yet. So let's go ahead and change that. Let's open up first our date, and I'm going to grab my day name short field here from my date table, and I'm going to add that to my rows. And you can see over here, I've got, no real logical order to my days. Right now, they're just alphabetical. That's why you're seeing Friday followed by Monday, followed by Saturday, Sunday. This is just, it's just an alphabetical order for this, instead of being in the logical order that you would expect to see weekdays. This is why when I was building out this quick and dirty date table, I insisted on adding my numeric month column where each month of the year gets a number assigned to it, and that's why I did the same thing over here with day of week. And if you'll remember when I originally did that, I thought that Sunday might be 1 and Saturday might be 7. Power BI instead started the numbering here at 0 and ended it at 6. None of that matters. I really don't care which numbers get assigned to these days as long as the numbers increase according to the days of the week or the months. But in order to get these days over here lined up correctly, I do need to map these alphabetical day names to the numeric day of the week. And this is very, very easy. This is something that you're going to have to do a ton of times in Power BI. Basically, anytime you're working with logical ordering instead of alphabetical ordering. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on day name short. And up here in our column tools, there's this little icon. And we're going to grab this, and you'll see the up arrow and the down arrow. Basically, these are the controls that we have over how this column gets ordered. And instead of using day name short, we're going to say that we want this ordered by day of week, which contains the numbers that correspond to the ordering of our days. And you'll notice that as soon as I told it to sort by day of week, now we're seeing day name short sorted by Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Even though I don't think that I'm going to need it right away, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with month name short, because you'll notice that as soon as I drop this onto the page, it's also in the wrong order, with April here first alphabetically because it starts with an A, and it just goes A, F, J, M. So in order to fix this little wrinkle, we're going to just do exactly the same thing. I'm going to click on month name short, click on my column over here on the right, go up here to that little up down arrow icon in my column tools and tell it instead to sort by month. And now you can see that I have January, February, March, April, May, June. Everything's in the correct order. So I just thought that I would quickly take care of that issue while we build out our first visual. Now I'm going to go ahead and open up my Kraken Koffee fact table, and let's go ahead and grab our hour column and drop this into our columns so that now I have my daily sales, my total daily sales for the entire year by hour of the day and by the day of the week. Now, my problem here is how many of you can super quickly interpret this table and immediately tell me when most of our business happens. chances are you're sitting there right now and going, okay, 3,000 here, 8,000, oh, that's a big increase, 11,000, 12,000, oh, okay, so it looks like, everything's kind of concentrated here. And then it looks like it kind of, tapers off and, oh, okay, man, there's barely anything left by the time we get to 7 or 8 o'clock or 1,900 hours, 2,000 hours in the evening. Okay, that didn't take you very long, but that's still way too long for somebody who's reading an infographic. What we want to do is we want to make the interpretation of this visual near instantaneous. So what we're going to do is we're going to use conditional formatting here, and we're just going to trim the fat here and get rid of these text values entirely. So first, real quickly, I'm just going to go through here and let's make some small changes. Day name short is something that probably doesn't mean anything to someone who's looking at this visual. This is just the title that I chose for this matrix. So let's just go ahead and change this to just day. That's all that people need to know about that. And I'm actually going to turn off my totals here. These are also not going to be a focus of my visual, at least not this visual. And I'm going to go ahead and choose my DIN fonts. Again, this is more of just a personal preference, but especially where tables are concerned, I just find DIN to be an easily readable font. So that's why I kind of lean hard on it. Next, I'm going to go to my grid settings, and my grid settings and my padding are just going to add a little bit of additional spacing here, just to sort of give this visual room to breathe. I don't need to get too crazy with it, but I'm just going to go ahead and give it a little bit more room there. Now I'm going to go to my border settings, and you'll see this blue line that's kind of running horizontally and vertically. I don't need that, so I'm just going to go ahead and make it white. Now let's focus on the more cool stuff where this visual is concerned. I'm going to go ahead and give myself a little bit more room over here, pull this down, and I'm going to go ahead and head up here to my cell elements where I'm going to add conditional formatting. And I'm going to turn on my background color, and you can see immediately, oh, okay, there's a much deeper color here in the months or in the time of day where my sales are higher. That's great. That's exactly what I want. I'm even going to add a little bit more impact there so that you can really see, okay, it looks like almost all of my sales are happening around, between 7 a.m. and 11 a.m., which again is exactly what I would expect from a coffee shop. And you can also see maybe, okay, it looks like maybe Tuesdays and Fridays have had the largest sales so far in 2023, but you can see overall it's pretty consistent on the whole. And the next thing that I'm going to do, and this might be somewhat counterintuitive to you, is I'm going to do the exact same thing with my font colors. Because ultimately, the values here in my table, they don't really matter. I just want people to know when during the day and when during the week do I see most of my sales. The numbers themselves are sort of inconsequential. And if somebody, just hovers over this table, we should be able to turn our tooltips on and give them the ability to, actually see those values if we think that they're really important to people. But by and large, we just want people to be able to see the overall pattern during the day and during the week instantly, which is something that we've accomplished much more easily by just hiding the text values entirely. Now, this is one area where if you disagree with me, no problem. People disagree with me all the time. And, there are some people that are, and especially my business partners, sometimes people just want to see those values in the matrix. So how do we give them what they want without it being, without it overpowering the visual? I insist that it's really important that people sort of see this color gradient first and foremost. So if people do still want to see the text values, no problem, we can do that. What we're going to do is I'm going to open up my font color conditional formatting settings, and I'm just going to go a little bit darker for every single color that I've selected. And now you can actually faintly make out the colors because the gradient being used on the font is just a smidge darker than the background color gradient. So now you can still read everything. I agree, it's it's a little bit difficult to read, but it's there. And if somebody's insistent on reading it, I'm sure that they'll figure out a way, but at least we're sort of giving people the best of both worlds. And if we want to increase the font sizes just a little bit, maybe that makes it, slightly easier. But for me, I'm still just going to go back, and since this is my infographic that I'm building, I'm just going to drop my gradient back down. Let's see, one more. And it looks like I'm still screwing this up somehow. So let's go back up here to my background colors and make sure that I'm grabbing the right colors here. Do this one more time. There we go. That got it. Okay, so now my font colors are gone. Now let's go ahead and transition our focus to the next visual that I want to build. And here, what I'm going to try to do is, really sell home or drive home when during the day we're seeing the most sales. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to kind of cheat and use the top column headers here of my matrix. I'm going to use this as the x-axis for a completely separate chart. I'm going to go ahead and grab a bar chart. I'm going to add that here. I'm going to add my hours just like I have them here. I'm going to grab my total sales, and I basically want it to look just like this. I'm going to kind of drag it down. I'm going to try my best to sort of line up my bars with this chart. Next, I'm going to go over to my general effects setting. I'm going to turn off the background so that I can see all of my matrix. Next, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my x-axis completely because like I said, I'm literally just going to be using the columns here as the x-axis for my bar chart. And that's looking okay. Let's go ahead and move that out of the way. Now I'm going to go up and to my bar chart and update my y-axis and change my y-axis to DIN. I'm going to punch up the font a little bit. You can see that's kind of throwing off my spacing a little bit, but no big deal. Now I'm going to go back to my matrix, and let's go ahead and use center alignment for all of my column headers. That's going to help all of these bars line up a little bit more easily with the header of the matrix that I'm using as an x-axis. And now let's go ahead and go to general settings. Let's go to advanced options. Let's turn off our responsive settings as usual. That's going to be really important for this sort of hybrid chart that we're building. Let's go to my column settings real fast. I'm going to turn on conditional formatting again. I'm going to use the same formatting here that I'm using in the bar chart that I'm using down here, just to sort of drive home the relationship between these two visuals. That's all looking pretty good. While I am here with my columns, let's go ahead and head back up here. And one thing that I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm thinking maybe I can fit even more information into this chart. So let's go ahead and turn this into a clustered bar and line chart. That's all looking pretty good. Just kind of checking my settings here real fast. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my average order size, and I'm going to add that to my y-axis. It's okay to keep the line here because, after all, we are showing a change in trend over time. We're showing that average order size tends to dip until around 8 a.m. Then it looks like it increases to around 9 or 10, and then average order size gradually dips throughout the day. And then it looks like it shoots up here at the very end of the day at around 8 o'clock or 2000 hours in the evening. But this is very, very low volume. Even though it looks like average order size is huge, that we're still not getting a whole lot of sales during this time of day. Next, let's go ahead and update our line. And I'm going to use just a dotted line for this. I'm going to go ahead and decrease the size here. Let's add markers. And something that, as I'm building this, I'm thinking might be cool if we could pull this off is let's go ahead and add a, what I want to do is I want to make sure that I'm just seeing a label on this last average order size because this is going to be the max average order size during the entire time of day. So let's go ahead and create a new measure in our nested measures. And I'm going to call this max average order size by hour. And what I want to do here is I want to tell Power BI for all transaction hours, I want you to return the maximum, and that's why I'm using this max X formula. This max X formula is going to take my average order size and it's going to find the largest value across all hours. And I'm going to grab that and I'm going to test it out by just dropping this down into my tooltips. And let's go ahead and hover over these values. And you can see as I hover over each hour, notice that my max average order size is always 487. And that 487 corresponds with the average order size up here. You can visually see that this is the maximum order size. Now I'm going to create a special marker just for this maximum order size. It's going to be dynamic and it will change if the user were to apply any filters. And so for this new marker, I'm going to create another measure here. And I'm going to call this max average order size marker. And for this, I'm going to use switch. Switch is a function that is exactly like an if statement. I could have used if here, but I'm just using switch to give you some exposure to an additional DAX measure. Switch literally switches the output of this measure based on any criteria that I give this function being, in this case, true. So I'm basically saying if the following condition is true, do this, and if it's not true, do something else. So I'm going to tell this thing if average order size matches my max average order size per hour, then return average order size, and if they don't match, just return blank. And so there should only be one instance in this chart where my average order size equals my max average order size, and that's going to be over here at $4.87. So let's go ahead and add my marker here to my y-axis, and you can see that I now have an orange dot up here. This is because I'm basically overlaying the exact same measure here, but only one value is appearing, and that is where my average order size matches the maximum average order size for any hour during the day. And notice that if I go down here and if I click on another day, notice how that orange dot always has one value, and it kind of floats around all over the visual so that it's always capturing the maximum average order size value. Now, the only thing that we have left to do is let's just go ahead and give that, that specific marker a more intuitive name so that people know what they're looking at. So let's go ahead and we're going to have to create a new measure here, and this one is going to be called max marker label. And one thing that I'm noticing that I forgot to do here is that my bar chart label, I created a whole measure table for formatting and text values. So let's go ahead and click on my bar chart label here, and let's tell Power BI that we want the home table for that to not be nested measures, but let's move it to formatting and text. And you can see, there it is. I'm just going to go ahead and hide column 1. Now I've got a third measure table down here, and this is where I'm going to add my max average order size marker label. And for this, I'm just going to write in quotes, max order size, and I'm going to concatenate with that I want to format my max AOS marker, and I want to show this as currency. And the zeros that I enter here, if you're confused by what these are, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. It's an easy thing. If I were to just use a hashtag or a numeric sign, these digits could drop off if something should happen where the number has a 0 in like these decimal places or where the value is just 0, this number may come up as blank. By putting a 0 here in my formatting sections, or where I'm telling Power BI how I want the number to be formatted, it just ensures that something, even if it's a 0, will always appear in these 3 places of the string. So now let's go ahead and save our max order size marker label, and let's go ahead and head back over to our chart. Let's turn on data labels, and this visual is about to get super noisy and ugly. I'm going to turn that on, and oh man, there's data labels for everything. That's super gross. Let's go ahead and for total sales, let's turn off those labels. For average order size, let's turn off those labels. And for max AOS marker, you can see I've got my 487 here. That's great, but what I want to use is the custom label that I just created. Notice that as I turn custom label on, my 487 here, notice that it goes away. And now I can drop my max AOS marker label there. And now I've got this string that I wrote up here appearing as my new data label for max order size, $4.87. Let's go ahead and punch that up and make it a little bit larger. If you want to make sure that users understand that this description goes with this dot, you can even use the same formatting so that people associate orange and orange. And of course, as this moves around, you might notice that the number is actually disappearing here. Never mind, I know exactly what's happening. Let's go ahead and head back over here to our settings. And one thing that I'm just realizing I forgot to update here is if I go to my options and go to report settings, currently I have the default visual interaction set to cross highlighting instead of cross filtering. This is another setting in Power BI that you are almost always going to have to update. And it drives me crazy that this is the default. I don't know anybody who prefers cross highlighting to cross filtering, but I'm going to go ahead and just turn this on. In effect, switching my visual interactions to cross filtering. And now when I hit OK, notice that it immediately fixes the problem that I was having where my maximum order size text was disappearing. So now if I click on, Wednesday or Thursday, notice that my dot still moves. And so does my descriptive text explaining, that this is always the maximum order size. Real quickly, I'm going to head back up here to my visual. I'm going to go to my data labels, and I'm going to turn off the background, and I'm going to specify that I want this to, let's see, I think I prefer it above as much as I can help it. That looks pretty good. Okay, so now we're done with this sort of hybrid visual that we've built. The next thing that I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and let's see, just move these there. I'm actually going to turn off the title on this visual because I'm going to be creating my own title. There's some additional formatting changes that, of course, we're going to need to build when we start wrapping up our infographic. But for now, I'm just going to leave these two visuals here. They tell the story that I want to tell, sort of highlighting when we're doing the most business, and you can see that even average order size is by and large largest between 9 and 10 a.m. So it looks like, this 8 to 10 block is sort of our, I would say our golden time during the day when we're doing the most business. None of that's terribly surprising. But I'm going to create even one more super simple visual just to sort of further summarize how much of our business we're doing in the morning relative to the rest of the day. So let's go ahead and head down here to our Kraken Koffee fact table. And I'm going to be adding a new custom column to my table here. And this is not going to be a custom column or anything that we're adding in the Power Query editor. Since we're here in the front end in the report builder, I'm going to be creating this column just using DAX. And I'm going to call this column time of day, and I'm going to use a simple if function here. So we're going to, like I said, this is just like the switch command that I just demonstrated a moment ago, but you may prefer to use if. That's fine. Switch, once you get a handle for it, I think is a little bit easier. But if is, I think, makes more sense to people when they're newer to DAX or newer to coding. I feel like everybody starts out with if, and that's totally fine. And the syntax though is pretty similar. We're giving Power BI a set of instructions, and we're telling it if the following criteria is true, then I want this output, and if it's not true, I want a different output. So in this case, we're going to say for this column, if our transaction hour is less than 2, or less than 12, less than noon, then I want to call that morning. If our transaction hour is less than 1800 hours or 6 p.m., depending on where you are, I want to call that afternoon, and all other hours should fall safely into evening. Now I'm going to take all of my total sales and I'm going to drop these into my values here. There's my $698,000 and change. And let's go ahead and add our new time of day that we just created. Let's add that to our legend here. And I'm going to go ahead and further simplify this visual. I will say that if you are using a donut chart, and in my humble opinion, it should always only ever be a donut chart, never a pie chart. Sean doesn't like pie charts. A lot of people don't like pie charts, and Sean agrees with them. And I also don't usually talk about myself in the third person. So I like donut charts when they're simple. I wouldn't recommend ever creating a donut chart if you have more than 2 or 3 values. But if you only have 2 or 3 values, I think you can get away with using a donut chart. But I always recommend that you keep these donut charts super, super simple. So let's go ahead and turn off our legend. I'm going to go ahead and update my data labels to just show the category and the percent. And for my percent values, I'm going to just do away with the percentages entirely. And that looks pretty good to me. Really what I want people to focus on is I just want them to see, okay, morning 56%, afternoon 35%, evening 9%. Pretty easy, right? Okay, now that we've got that, I think that we're in pretty good shape for our time visuals. Now, I want to get to a slightly more complex area of our report where we're actually going to use the amount of sales that we've had in the first half of the year to do a very, very rough projection of where sales for the entire year may well end up. So let's go ahead and create a new page here, and I'm just going to call this Rough Forecast. Not intended to have much precision here. This is just going to be a very rough ballpark, and I'm going to teach you how to accomplish this using DAX.